In a significant turn of events, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is emerging as a central figure in the Trump administration's aggressive stance on foreign policy, particularly regarding the growing tensions with China. In recent statements, Rubio has announced a controversial initiative aimed at revoking the visas of Chinese students linked to the Chinese Communist Party, igniting a fierce debate on the implications for U.S. China relations and higher education in America. Rubio's commitment to this policy underscores a broader strategy within the Trump administration to confront perceived threats from China in various sectors, particularly in academia. Under President Trump's leadership, the U.S. State Department will work with the Department of Homeland Security to aggressively revoke visas for Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. Rubio declared last week. This announcement follows a pattern of escalating scrutiny of Chinese influence in U.S. institutions, especially in the wake of anti-Israel protests at universities such as Columbia. The decision to target Chinese students comes amid heightened geopolitical tensions, and it reflects a significant policy shift. Critics argue that this approach could alienate a vital segment of the international student population, potentially harming U.S. universities that rely heavily on tuition from foreign students. The broader implications of such a crackdown extend beyond academia, as it may further strain U.S.-China relations at a time when diplomatic dialogue is already fraught. Rubio's rise to prominence within the administration is noteworthy. Initially perceived as a less influential cabinet member, he has recently taken on the dual role of Secretary of State and acting National Security Advisor, a position historically held by few. This consolidation of power allows him to steer U.S. foreign policy in a manner that aligns closely with Trump's nationalist agenda. His recent actions have captivated media attention, with Rubio leveraging his new authority to address not only international issues but also domestic concerns related to immigration and national security. The Secretary's transformation from a relatively quiet figure to a vocal advocate for sweeping policy changes exemplifies the shifting dynamics within the administration. Rubio has displayed a willingness to engage directly with critics and assert his vision for a more assertive U.S. foreign policy. During a recent heated exchange in Congress, he fired back at Representative Gregory Meeks, who questioned budget cuts to USAID, asserting, "This is not my job." A statement that encapsulates his growing frustration with the political landscape. Moreover, Rubio's actions indicate a broader strategy to reshape the State Department's priorities. Reports suggest that he is restructuring the agency to focus on more agile responses to modern challenges, including a proposed new Office of Remigration aimed at facilitating deportations. This shift in focus towards domestic operations has drawn both support and criticism, with some lawmakers expressing concern over the potential consequences of prioritizing immigration enforcement over traditional diplomatic efforts. As Rubio continues to navigate these complex challenges, his role as a key player in Trump's foreign policy apparatus is becoming increasingly pronounced. With the administration's focus on aggressive actions against China and a re-evaluation of U.S. visa policies, the ramifications of these initiatives are yet to be fully understood. The evolving situation suggests that the coming months will be critical in determining both the trajectory of U.S.-China relations and the future of international student engagement in American higher education. Looking ahead, the implications of Rubio's policies will likely reverberate beyond the halls of power in Washington. As universities grapple with the potential fallout from reduced Chinese enrollment and as tensions with China remain a focal point of U.S. foreign policy, the administration's approach could shape the landscape of international relations for years to come. The world watches closely as Rubio and the Trump administration navigate these turbulent waters, balancing national security concerns with the enduring values of open education and collaboration, in a significant development at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a stark warning to Indo-Pacific allies regarding the escalating military and economic challenges posed by China. His remarks delivered during a keynote address on Saturday, May 31, 2025 emphasized the urgency of the threat, particularly concerning Taiwan, which China views as a breakaway province and has not ruled out using force to achieve reunification. Hegseth's address came amid increasing tensions in the region, where China has been ramping up military exercises and demonstrating its capabilities to potentially blockade Taiwan. He stated China's army is rehearsing for the real deal, underscoring the seriousness of the situation. According to Hegseth, the Pentagon does not intend to downplay the risks, asserting the threat China poses is real, and it could be imminent. China's response was swift and dismissive. Rear Admiral Hu Gangfeng, leading the Chinese delegation at the summit, labeled Hegseth's statements as groundless accusations. He accused the U.S. of trying to provoke division within the region and claimed that such remarks were attempts to destabilize the Asia-Pacific. Hu's comments reflect a broader narrative from Beijing, which consistently portrays U.S. actions as aggressive and hegemonic. Amid these heightened tensions, Hegseth called on nations in the Indo-Pacific to increase their defense spending, mirroring the 5% of GDP that European countries are now urged to contribute. He insisted that the U.S. would not bear the burden of defense alone, stating, "We must all do our part." This call for increased local defense spending aligns with a strategic shift wherein the U.S. seeks to bolster its military presence without overextending its resources globally, especially as it reallocates military assets to address needs in the Middle East and Europe. Despite Hegseth's assurances of U.S. commitment to the Indo-Pacific, there are lingering questions about the reliability of American support. Historically, U.S. military resources have been diverted from the region to address conflicts elsewhere, raising concerns among allies about the U.S.'s pivot to Asia. Hegseth acknowledged these challenges but reiterated that a robust network of allies is essential to countering China's ambitions. Australia's Defence Minister Richard Morley's echoed Hegseth's sentiments, affirming that the United States plays a vital role in maintaining the balance of power in the region. He stated, "There is no effective balance of power in this region absent the United States." However, he also cautioned that aggressive U.S. trade policies could undermine this stability, referencing the disruptive impact of high tariffs. The dialogue also highlighted the delicate balancing act that many Indo-Pacific nations face as they navigate relationships with both the U.S. and China. Hegseth cautioned that economic dependence on China could compromise regional security, complicating defense decisions during times of tension. This warning resonates amid the backdrop of China's expanding influence, particularly in markets and strategic areas like the Panama Canal. As discussions unfolded, the absence of China's Defense Minister Dong Jun, typically a key figure at the Shangri-La dialogue, was noted. This snub was interpreted by the U.S. delegation as an opportunity to assert its leadership in the region. Hegseth emphasized that U.S. support would not require local governments to conform to Western cultural or climate policies, aiming to broaden America's appeal among potential allies. The Shangri-La dialogue serves as a critical platform for security discussions, and this year's exchanges reflect the ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Indo-Pacific. With both the U.S. and China laying claim to regional dominance, the stakes are high for nations caught in the crossfire. As the dialogue concluded, the implications of Hegseth's warnings and China's pushback signal an ongoing struggle for influence that will define the security landscape in the years ahead. As nations reassess their defense strategies in light of these developments, the future will likely see increased military collaborations and a recalibration of alliances in response to the shifting dynamics of power in the Indo-Pacific. The emphasis on collective security and mutual defense spending could redefine the region's strategic framework, particularly as the specter of conflict over Taiwan looms larger on the horizon. In an era where dietary habits and public health policies are increasingly intertwined with political ideologies, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has emerged as a contentious figure in the dialogue surrounding nutrition and health. His recent Make America Healthy Again report has sparked a wave of both support and criticism, particularly regarding his views on ultra-processed foods. As a cabinet official, Kennedy's campaign against these foods has not only reignited discussions about dietary choices but has also drawn parallels with Michelle Obama's past initiatives aimed at improving children's nutrition. Kennedy's report, released on May 22, presents a stark warning about the dangers of ultra-processed foods, suggesting that their prevalence in American diets is contributing to a public health crisis. "Anything delicious will leave us glued to insulin pumps," he quipped, drawing ire from those who view his perspective as overly punitive towards a culture that celebrates indulgent foods. This sentiment was echoed by Peter Melman, a former writer and producer for Seinfeld, who lamented the potential erosion of nostalgic comfort foods in the face of modern health scrutiny. While Kennedy's stance has prompted a visceral reaction among food lovers, it has also raised significant questions about the intersection of nutrition and policy. His claims about processed foods are not without merit. Many studies correlate high consumption of these foods with obesity and chronic diseases. However, critics argue that his approach lacks a nuanced understanding of the complexities involved in American food culture. Melman's exploration of his own nostalgic food journey highlights this tension as he recalls the allure of foods like Wonder Bread and Kraft macaroni and cheese while grappling with the reality of their nutritional implications. Interestingly, Michelle Obama, who championed healthier school lunches during her tenure as First Lady, has found herself in a somewhat parallel position. During a recent podcast appearance, she reflected on the backlash she faced for advocating against sugary drinks and processed foods. Obama noted that her efforts were often mischaracterized as an attempt to dictate dietary choices, a sentiment that resonates with Kennedy's current experiences. "It became a partisan issue," she remarked, illustrating how health initiatives can become entangled with political agendas. Obama's initiatives such as the 2010 Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act aim to modernize school meal standards and promote healthier eating among children. Yet her efforts were met with significant resistance, particularly from conservative factions who criticized her approach as overreaching. Fast forward to today, and Kennedy's similar calls for nutritional reform are being met with a different reception, arguably due to shifting political dynamics. The juxtaposition of Kennedy and Obama's experiences raises important questions about the evolving landscape of public health advocacy. While Kennedy's current position as Secretary of Health and Human Services allows him to push for significant changes in food policy, his controversial views have ignited debates about the validity of his claims. Recent scrutiny has revealed that some of the research studies he cites in his report do not exist, prompting calls for greater scientific rigor in public health recommendations. The implications of Kennedy's recommendations are vast, particularly concerning the COVID-19 vaccine policies he announced recently. His decision to no longer recommend annual vaccinations for healthy pregnant women and young adults has drawn ire from public health experts who argue this could endanger vulnerable populations. The CDC's subsequent guidance regarding vaccinations has also faced criticism for being unclear, potentially limiting access to essential vaccines for those who need them most. As the nation grapples with the consequences of ultra-processed foods and the ongoing implications of COVID-19, the narratives surrounding Kennedy and Obama reveal a broader struggle over how health and nutrition are framed in public discourse. The contrasting receptions to their advocacy highlight the critical need for a balanced dialogue that prioritizes scientific evidence and public health over partisan divides. Looking ahead, it remains to be seen how Kennedy's policies will reshape the landscape of American dietary habits and public health initiatives. As the conversation continues to evolve, the quest for a more health-conscious America must navigate the complex interplay of nostalgia, dietary preferences, and the realities of modern health challenges. In this context, the future of food policy will undoubtedly remain a focal point as Americans seek to reconcile their culinary heritage with the demands of a healthier lifestyle. In a significant shift within the Trump administration's approach to judicial nominations, Attorney General Pam Bondi has announced the termination of the American Bar Association's ABA role in vetting nominees. This decision has sparked concerns among legal experts and advocacy groups, particularly LGBTQ+ organizations, who fear that it could undermine the quality and integrity of the judicial selection process. This move is seen as a continuation of the Trump administration's broader strategy to diminish the influence of traditional legal institutions. Andrew Ortiz, a representative from the Transgender Law Center, criticized the decision, stating, "This is a continuation of the administration's attack on the rule of law." The ABA has long been regarded as a leading authority in evaluating the qualifications of judicial candidates, and its exclusion raises questions about the standards being applied in future appointments. Pam Bondi, who has been closely associated with Donald Trump particularly during his first impeachment, has her own controversial background. Recent financial disclosures reveal that she earned at least $3 million from her involvement with Trump-related businesses, including shares in Digital World Acquisition Corporation, which merged with Trump Media and Technology Group. Critics have raised alarms over her financial ties to Trump, questioning her ability to maintain independence as Attorney General. During her Senate confirmation hearing, Bondi assured lawmakers, "I believe that the Justice Department must be independent and must act independently," emphasizing her commitment to enforcing the law fairly. However, skepticism remains regarding her ability to detach from the political influence of the Trump administration. The appointment of several of Trump's personal lawyers to top roles within the Justice Department has only heightened concerns about potential conflicts of interest. Legal experts warned that this pattern may compromise the department's ability to act in the national interest rather than serving the president's personal agenda. In a related controversy, Bondi has faced pressure from right-wing factions to expedite the release of documents pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein, a task she has reportedly struggled to fulfill. After a failed release of what was termed Phase 1 of the Epstein files, which contained primarily already public information, Bondi was criticized for her handling of the situation. Reports indicate that she redirected resources from the Department of Justice's National Security Division to search for more substantial material. Yet little was found. This has led to accusations from Democratic lawmakers that she is deliberately stalling the release of information that could implicate Trump and his associates. As Bondi settles into her role as Attorney General, the implications of her actions and the administration's strategies will likely come under intense scrutiny. The decisions made during this time not only affect judicial appointments but also reflect the ongoing tension between the rule of law and the politicization of the Department of Justice. Looking ahead, the relationship between the Trump administration and established legal norms will continue to be tested, raising critical questions about the future of judicial integrity in the United States. As these developments unfold, the legal community and the public will be watching closely to see how Bondi navigates these complex challenges. In a recent appearance on CBS's Face the Nation, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent addressed a multitude of pressing economic issues, including the United States' relationship with China, the state of inflation, and the implications of a significant new budget bill. His insights come at a time when concerns about the nation's debt and economic stability are mounting, particularly in light of J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon's stark warning of a potential bond market crisis. Bessent opened the discussion by addressing escalating tensions with China, particularly in light of military threats towards Taiwan. He emphasized the need for the U.S. to de-risk its supply chains, recalling the unreliability of Chinese partnerships during the COVID-19 pandemic. "We do not want to decouple, but we do need to de-risk," he asserted, highlighting the critical nature of products like semiconductors and medicines that are essential for global supply chains. The conversation turned to President Trump's recent accusations against China for violating a trade agreement, with Bessent expressing optimism that upcoming talks between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping would clarify the situation. This sentiment reflects a broader hope within the administration that diplomatic channels can mitigate rising tensions. However, he acknowledged the underlying complexities, including China's current withholding of critical minerals and rare earths, which are vital for various industries. When questioned about inflation, Bessent was quick to counter narratives of impending price hikes, citing recent data that showed a decrease in inflation for the first time in 4 years. "Everything has been alarmist," he remarked, pointing out that energy prices, including gasoline, have seen a substantial drop. However,
He recognized the ongoing concerns retailers have about the impact of tariffs, particularly with back-to-school shopping approaching.
As the discussion progressed, the topic shifted to the recently passed House budget bill, which is now under scrutiny in the Senate. Besant confidently stated the United States of America is never going to default, dismissing fears that the country might face a fiscal crisis. He emphasized that the current administration's approach would lead to a reduction in the deficit over the coming years, despite the bill's critics' warning of its potential to add significantly to the national debt. Besant also addressed the regulatory landscape for banks, mentioning an impending change to the supplemental leverage ratio that would allow banks to hold more treasuries. This adjustment aims to stabilize the treasury market, which has faced volatility in recent years. He expressed hope that easing these restrictions would enhance liquidity and lower long-term borrowing rates, countering concerns voiced by Diamond regarding a looming crisis in the bond market. In conclusion, Besant's remarks underscore a pivotal moment for the U.S. economy, where the intersection of international relations, domestic policy, and market stability is more critical than ever. As the administration navigates these challenges, stakeholders will be closely monitoring the outcomes of pending negotiations with China, the Senate's handling of the budget bill, and the broader implications for the financial markets. The coming weeks will prove crucial as the U.S. seeks to balance its fiscal responsibilities while fostering an environment conducive to economic growth. In the ever-evolving landscape of international trade, recent developments surrounding U.S. tariffs have sparked renewed debate and concern among economists and policymakers alike. Following a federal trade court ruling that deemed many of President Trump's tariffs illegal, administration officials have insisted that these tariffs will remain in place, signaling a commitment to continuing pressure on China and other trade partners. This situation not only reflects the ongoing complexities of U.S. China trade relations but also highlights the administration's determination to leverage tariffs as a negotiating tool. On June 1, 2025, key advisors to President Trump reaffirmed their stance on tariffs during various media appearances, asserting that the administration would not be swayed by the court's decision. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick emphasized the White House's resolve, stating, "Rest assured, tariffs are not going away," and indicated that there were alternative legal avenues available for the administration to explore. This insistence comes despite the court's ruling that Trump had misused emergency economic powers to impose tariffs, a decision which could have led to an immediate halt of these duties. However, an appeals court granted the government a temporary reprieve, allowing the administration time to address the legal challenges ahead. The backdrop of this legal battle is a fragile truce between the U.S. and China following a period of escalating tariffs that had rattled global markets. Just days before the court ruling, President Trump criticized China for not adhering to a preliminary agreement that aimed to lower tariffs, a move that had been brokered in Geneva. The administration's approach has been characterized by reciprocal tariffs, which saw rates on imported steel double to 50%, likely leading to higher prices for American consumers. As the administration grapples with these challenges, the question remains whether a meaningful dialogue between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping can take place to address these trade tensions. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent expressed optimism about potential discussions, suggesting that a conversation could occur very soon. He noted that the U.S. had concerns about delayed approvals for crucial exports by China, including rare earth minerals vital for technology and manufacturing, which have become a focal point in negotiations. The implications of the tariff strategy extend beyond immediate economic concerns. Analysts warn that prolonged tariff disputes could hinder broader economic growth and complicate supply chains. Bessent acknowledged the complexity of these dynamics, underscoring that the construction industry, which relies heavily on steel, could face significant disruptions as tariffs remain in place. In summary, while the Trump administration remains steadfast in its tariff strategy amid legal challenges, the potential for dialogue with China hangs in the balance. As both sides navigate this intricate web of negotiations, the future of U.S. China relations and the global economic landscape remains uncertain.
Observers will be watching closely for developments in the coming weeks, particularly any signs of thawing tensions that might lead to a more constructive trade environment.